What's up, guys? I hope you're doing well so far. Let's go straight to the chase. You are watching Bucky Reviews Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 3, A Man Alone. Now, this one is pretty rough. It's not great, in my opinion, for a number of reasons. It tries to do a lot, and it does a lot of things not very well. But before we get into that, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you are new or returning. It's free, costs you nothing. You can always undo it later, and it helps me out a lot. With that in mind, I'm going to roll the intro, pull up my notes, and we can get right into talking about it. So, engage. Alright, so like I said, A Man Alone, Season 1, Episode 3 of DS9 is not my favorite episode of the show. In fact, I'll go ahead and say it's the worst one so far. Of course, there's only 3 so far, but of those 3, it is at the bottom. I think it's a character episode, truly, about Odo, about many other characters as well, and their, like, relationships. But it feels very stitched together, very Frankenstein, and it attempts to do too much while using a very contrived murder mystery to give itself some kind of spine, some kind of plot to, be built off of. So at least it attempts to have a plot, which is more so than what I can say about Emissary. If you remember what I said about Emissary, I said that it struggled because it did a lot, but not with a central plot to guide it. This one has a central plot that just falls incredibly flat. And it focuses on 2 primary things which don't really kind of connect to the plot at all. They're kind of just the point of the episode is not the plot, it's the dynamics of the characters and the messaging that it sets up and the characterization. It uses the plot to try to drive that forward, but it doesn't actually do that at all. It simply exists to exist and doesn't really integrate the characterization and the theming into the plot at all. So the 2 things that it tries to do here, that it tries to focus on, are relationships and this concept of justice versus the law. And it uses Odo as its main character here to do that. Now, Odo is probably one of my favorite Star Trek characters of all time. He's great. Rene Auberjonois is an amazing actor. Rest in peace. And he's just all around a very good character. And I kind of discussed why I think that's the case in a previous episode. I think I may have been Emissary, and I'll have a lot more to say about him as we go on because he's just amazing. But here, he doesn't do a whole lot that's actually that great, which isn't the character's fault, it's more of the writing's fault. Or the things that happen around the character don't lend well to him doing a whole lot. So let's get into what kind of this episode is about and what it has to offer. So we open up here with... I'm going to say this a lot. Go ahead and start tallying how many times I mentioned that the episode opens up with Dr. Bashir. They love to do this. They love to use Dr. Bashir to open the episode and then not use him for the rest of the episode. Because right now he exists just to be a clown, to kind of... But it happens a lot of times. Here we have Bashir and Dax, and Bashir walks in, a very uncomfortable scene. He walks in on Dax doing this, like, brain puzzle game, and he's like, how does it work? Why don't you show me? And so she obviously clues into the fact that she is being hit on, and she is hundreds of years old, Trill, so she's more experienced, she's wiser. She kind of takes advantage of this naivety in Bashir and kind of toys with him. Very uncomfortable from both angles, watching her toy with Bashir and watching him hit on her. Both very uncomfortable, very awkward. Though this does kind of play into what the episode is about, because it's about relationships and Dax. Dax and Bashir are 2 characters that so far exist solely off of their connections to other characters. They don't exist as characters of their own. They exist as a wall for other characters to bounce their feelings off of. So our only character knowledge of Dax is that other characters like her, that Sisko sees her as like a mentor or a friend, and that Bashir is obviously attracted to her. Bashir's only characterization so far is that he's just attracted to Dax. So it's not a great combination here. But this episode tries to show us lots of different relationships between characters. It's kind of like a pilot, I guess, for the character dynamics between each other. So the pilot itself, Emissary, like the actual pilot, uses its time to establish the characters as individuals. This episode, in its metaphorical pilot sense, uses its time to establish how the characters connect to each other and feel about each other, and even create some new connections as well. So that's the interesting opening scene. Once again, doesn't do a whole lot for the episode. It just simply exists to fill time, get you into the episode, and be uncomfortable, and kind of hint at a dynamic between Dax and Bashir, even though it is awkward and poorly done in my opinion. The what am I gonna say next? What else? So, oh yeah, here it is. Most of the scenes here that feel like unintentionally uncomfortable, not really the acting's fault. The actors generally do pretty good here. It's the writing. I'll go ahead and say that. In this scene, I think Dax and Bashir, or Farrell and Siddig do pretty good here in the scene for what they're given. But I imagine that the screenplay is a little off, a little strange. There is one exception to this, and I hate to say it, but it's Avery Brooks as Sisko. Maybe his most uncomfortable performance to date, like at least counting the first 3 episodes, and maybe just of all time for the whole show. We get a scene right after this Bashir and Dax scene in which Dax goes to get dinner with Sisko, and there's this perceived kind of love triangle between Julian Bashir, Benjamin Sisko, and Jadzia Dax that I think we're supposed to question whether or not it actually exists or not, because I think Bashir, we're supposed to believe that Bashir sees this love triangle between the three of them, and we as an audience are supposed to question if he's actually seeing something that's there or not. And this dinner scene just doesn't really allay any concerns about this kind of awkward situation, because Julian does not really know much about what the dynamic between Sisko and Dax is like. It's more of an old buddies, like mentor mentee thing, since Sisko's mentor in the past was Curzon Dax, the previous host. It'd be very weird if Sisko and Jadzia Dax were to pursue a romantic relationship. Julian does not really understand that. The audience should understand that and understand that he's kind of overthinking things. But the performance here from Brooks in this dinner scene is very weird. Easily his most serial killer-esque scene so far. Just super uncomfortable. It'll get better once again, but this is not it. So that's another relationship kind of scene that we see here in this episode. Then after that, once again, the plot hasn't happened yet. This is just all just set up still. We get a scene featuring Odo and Quark. Now, also tally this one too when I say that there's an amazing Odo and Quark scene in an episode, because it happens in most episodes as well. And here, it's no exception. We get it's a classic pairing. The writers obviously know that this is a good pairing, so they continue to do it. And this is where we kind of get at least for me, this is where I kind of picked up on the episode's point being about relationships on the ship, or on the station rather, is because they straight up talk about relationships. And we get a sort of a glimpse into Odo's thoughts on this topic. Very cynical, very closed off. He delivers a great line about compromise and how being in a relationship is just about compromise. It's like, your wife wants to do this, but you want to do this, so you choose to do this. And then as you're doing this, you want to do this, but she wants to do this, so then you end up doing what she wants again. And then by the end of it, you're doing the exact opposite of what you want to do. A very cynical approach to marriage. And that's kind of the view that he has. He's a Spock, Data type of character, where he's humanoid, but like not human. And he wants to be more... Those characters want to be more human. Odo does not want to be more human. He's content to be kind of closed off and cynical, and he talks later about how he doesn't really have an interest in material things. Here he talks about a lack of interest in relationships, which was something that Data would want to pursue, or Spock wants to pursue, right? Because it makes them more human. This is not the case here, and I appreciate this, a different take on this kind of character for DS9 here. So like I said, this episode is about Odo. It's a pilot for the relationships between characters on the ship. We see Dax and Sisko, like I said. We see Dax and Bashir, like I said. We see that kind of triangle doesn't go much besides Dax telling Bashir, like, hey, don't worry about it, that's not a thing. Like, Sisko and I aren't going to be a thing, for obvious reasons to the audience, hopefully. We also get to see the introduction of Keiko O'Brien here in this series. So we see some potential issues between Miles and Keiko and their marriage, which is further indication of relationships on the station. And we also get to see the start of Jake and Nog's friendship. Nog is the son of Rom. He's a Ferengi, Quark's brother. It's his brother, right? His brother Rom. So Nog is Quark's nephew. And we see this is an important friendship for the show, and it starts off pretty early on here in this episode. So I appreciate that this is a show that, unlike TOS and TNG, takes time to build relationships and dynamics that don't always start off great. They grow and they develop. It doesn't happen overnight. Like, some of these things take the entire 7 seasons to actually come to fruition and to change. And that's good, because in TNG and TOS, they already exist, or if they are new, they just become buddies and that's it. There's very few instances of characters having interpersonal growth or struggles or dynamics that are, well, dynamic in those shows. This is a character, and the character being Odo, but this is a show as well that does that with almost every character, honestly. It uses Odo as kind of the reflection of that to kind of bounce it off of here in this episode here. I do like that there is a level of belligerence between the Bajoran officers and the Starfleet officers. Once again, a very DS9 thing, not a very TNG or TOS thing here as well. And that still kind of persists here between Odo and Sisko. This is something that we will see get resolved pretty soon. But as for this episode, they don't really get along very well, to be honest. Because there's this murder mystery that I still haven't talked about the actual plot yet, which I'll get to soon. But there's this murder mystery, and Odo, as the kind of sheriff here in the Wild West station, he takes it upon himself to solve the mystery. And there's a bit of a conflict between Sisko and Odo about how they want to do this, because obviously Sisko is the head of the station, but Odo is the head of security, so it's both their jobs to have it taken care of. A bit of a difference in how they would take care of it. And Odo says he doesn't put as much stock in the law as he does justice. So if what he believes to be justice isn't what the law says, he's willing to go against the law, which is a pretty cool, a cool characterization to have for a chief of security on a Trek show. Because before, you would expect, especially for Starfleet, you expect them to be like, the law is the law, this is the way it has to be. Here we have a non-Starfleet security officer who says, yeah, if it's not just, then the law shouldn't be followed, and he's willing to go against that, and that causes some conflict between Starfleet and the Bajoran officers, Sisko and Odo. And there's also more of this talked about later with I'm pretty sure a future episode, I don't think it's this one, I'm pretty sure it's later on, in which we see a Starfleet security officer come, and they kind of, there's some friction there because of a similar reason to this. Let's see. I already talked about Odo being a different kind of Spock and Data doctor type character, and how he doesn't want to become more human. I'll go ahead and mention this as well, and then I'll finally talk about the actual plot of the episode. Odo seems a bit uncharacteristically standoffish here. Obviously, he'll change later on in the show, but like he seems a bit too belligerent and aggressive, which he kind of has to be in order to highlight and exemplify the points that the show is trying to make here. But maybe just a little overdone, perhaps. At the same time, though, it's also reasonable. His behavior is reasonable, and it fits his character going forward, so it's fine. It basically, to summarize that entire opening, this episode sets itself up as a study of the relationships and dynamics on the station, that ends up not really doing that at all, and becomes more about this very contrived, very stupid murder mystery, which I will get into now. So, it has a good idea going into it, like I said, about these dynamics and stuff, but the murder mystery does not integrate or incorporate these things at all. It's entirely separate. It's kind of like they should have been two different episodes. These two topics don't have any business being together. If they're going to have a relationship-based episode, have that be the A plot, and maybe have this murder mystery be the B plot if it exists in the first place. But don't start off with this like actually interesting topic and then sideline it and make this murder mystery, that's a very bad one at that, the A plot, and this other actually good topic, a B plot at most to non-existent at worst. It's just confusing to me as to why it would choose to sideline this topic after it sets it up and it's actually a good topic. This murder mystery is very bad, very uninteresting. I won't talk about much about it because it's boring, but I'll go ahead and explain why it's boring. The first mistake is it's as I mentioned, it's so detached from the actual concept that the show is trying to talk about that it's like, I'm not interested in that. Like, each time that there's a scene, which is almost every scene after the first 10 minutes, that there's a scene about this murder mystery, I'm like, can we just move on and get back to Keiko and Miles, or Cisco and Dax, or the actually important things, or Jake and Nog, right? And it's just, it doesn't go back usually. It just keeps going, and it's very, very boring. It exists as a spine, but imagine if your spine was not attached to your body. Imagine if your spine was just like on the outside of your body. It's not holding up anything. There's no meat on the bones for it to hold up. It just exists as the bones. Literally a bare bones episode. Very sad. So let's see what else. The mystery does kind of explore Odo's character through the justice versus the law thing, and his confrontations with Cisco and his talks with Quark portray him pretty well, and they're well scripted, well screenplayed. Those scenes with Odo talking with Cisco and Quark are actually the best parts of the episode. And I'll be saying this a lot for the first season, that the Odo and Quark parts of each episode are some of the best parts of each episode, even if they're not directly connected to the plot. On their own, they are the best scripted, best written parts of the episode. The mystery itself is terrible. So if you remember past prologue, the last episode, it was a mystery about some random Bajoran guy coming and causing some problems. That happens again. They really want to use Bajorans instead of using like brand new aliens from the Gamma Quadrant. It takes them a while to actually get to any kind of meaningful connection, any kind of meaningful alien from across the wormhole. They just use Bajorans for most of the conflict, and it's like, why? Why would you keep doing that over and over again? Here, a Bajoran troublemaker, we'll say, comes aboard, and Odo has a history with this person and tells him to leave after he causes some trouble. I believe at Quark's bar, he causes some trouble. So Odo's like, hey, get out of here. Odo has, like I said, a history. Something happened between them. But then the next time that we see the man, he's in a holosuite getting an oil massage by some hot alien lady. And then a hooded man comes and stabs him in the back. And naturally, the primary suspect here is Odo himself because of the history that they had. But, like, obviously Odo didn't do it. They're not going to have the main character of the episode and a main character in the entire series be a murderer in episode 3 of the series. So the audience obviously knows that Odo didn't do it, and the point of the episode is trying to prove that Odo didn't do it. And I think that the way that Odo interacts with like how damning the evidence against him is actually pretty interesting at first, because they find like, okay, no one else was in the holosuites that has like DNA left behind, that, and also no one could have gotten into the holosuite because the door didn't open at any point in time. So the only way that someone would have either gotten through the door or already been in the room was if they were a shapeshifter. So he could like turn to fluid and like go through the door cracks or whatever, or be an object in the room. So he had to have killed the man. And Odo kind of just like tells everybody this evidence. He's like, yeah, just so you know, guys, the only person who could have killed this guy is a changeling. Just so you know. He's very upfront because he takes his job seriously. He takes justice and evidence seriously. So he goes ahead and tells the truth here. He's like, hey, yeah, all signs point to me. I didn't do it, and I'll try my best to tell you that I didn't do it, but just so you know, the evidence points towards me. But this is about the only interesting thing that the mystery does, and this interesting thing is it's about Odo. It's not really even the mystery itself. It's Odo's character that's interesting here, not the actual plot. Now, the reveal for who the murderer is, well, it comes in kind of two stages, but both stages are incredibly boring, incredibly fall flat. It's very, very bad. It's almost insulting, actually. So around halfway through the episode, only the halfway mark, we get a random cutaway to a mysterious hooded figure, a random old Bajoran man. And it's like super ominous. He's in a hood. The music goes like super like spooky and stuff. And it's like, oh wow, this is probably the guy, isn't it? This random hooded figure probably is the guy who killed the guy, right? Just some random guy on the station. And so you're like, okay, interesting. There's no clues, no evidence that could have led to this. The episode, okay, a good mystery for the audience should leave clues, should leave indicators that could possibly allow them to be like, oh, hey, this is probably a strong contender for, the murderer. Or once the reveal is done, be like, oh, that makes sense. I recall seeing this piece of evidence at this point and this piece of evidence at this point. It all comes together now. It's an ass-pull, frankly. It comes out of nowhere, and it's done without any kind of, dramatization. It just happens. Oh, here's this hooded guy. And it's not even like a subversion or a red herring. He's just the guy. And it shows you this halfway through for no reason. And then, after this point, I'm getting more frustrated as I'm talking about it because it's just so frustrating and insulting to me. After this point, the show sets this kind of like arbitrary timer to solving the mystery by having Dr. Bashir find that he can like recreate the DNA in this, like, either he found it, did he find it in the holosuite or did he find it on some guy's ship? I forgot. But he's found that there's this guy has been doing some kind of like DNA testing. The victim has been doing this like DNA testing thing. These like experiments and stuff, and they use this DNA. Apparently, it's like reconstructible. They bring it into the sick bay, and they start to reconstruct it. Bashir's like, oh yeah, I can like do some stuff to it and like accelerate the growth process and reconstruct whatever he was trying to create with these experiments. And maybe that'll lead us to someone who would want to kill him, for example. So this is like our best prints for now. This is our best evidence. This is our best lead. So they do that, and if the rest of the episode is not about finding evidence or solving a mystery or getting clues, because they never tried that in the first place. Once again, there's no clues, no evidence here to help the audience. The rest of the episode actually is about something entirely different that's not established at all. It just kind of happens while we wait for this DNA to recreate. We see it grow over time. It's like a clump of flesh turns into, well, I'll tell you in a minute. But like it grows, and the timer is basically just whenever this thing is done growing, we will know what happened. And so there's no incentive to actually do any more investigating or like any kind of work towards the mystery, because the show sets this timer for us. It's like, hey, just so you know, this entire problem will be solved after this thing is done growing. And then you just kind of gotta wait. But of course, the episode doesn't just cut to when it's done growing. It tries to fill its time with a very like out of left field commentary on racism. So eventually, we're not given any reason why this happens, but the plot shifts to being about how the Bajorans on the station are mad at Odo for killing this guy. Now, we have no reason to believe, we're not given a reason why these people would even know that Odo is a prime suspect. Why does the entire station know about this evidence, this plot, right? It should be a thing that only Command knows about. And additionally, any kind of semblance between Odo and the humanoids, it's not there. Like, there was never a prior tension between how the people on the station treated Odo. Everyone treated him fine. That they didn't hate on him for being a changeling or anything like that. Like, it was like he was just a normal guy. He was integrated as part of the station. He was treated well. Of course, we don't really see him interact a whole lot, but we can assume that he was treated like fairly and normally with equity, right? Out of nowhere, these people on the station are just vicious racists against him, like shouting. Well, they're not really shouting slurs. They're just like, I think they're just calling him Shifter, which is what he is, but I guess that's kind of like a slur towards changelings. They're just shouting at him, like threatening to kill him, throwing stuff at him. It happens out of nowhere, and it's never actually resolved. We never see any kind of resolution for this racist people plot. These people don't ever come to justice. We're just, I guess, supposed to be chill with these people being racist and part of the station, because these are presumably the same like background characters that we'll be seeing for the rest of the show, these Bajoran officers on the station, and they never come to justice. They never change their mind. They just kind of leave eventually, and I'll explain why in a second here. They just kind of leave, and it's never resolved. So we get a sudden just boom, this conflict between changelings and humans, which is supposed to be like once again the humans being, or the humanoids rather, being racist against the changeling. And then it's never talked about ever again or resolved, and the people who do it don't change or come to justice, and the audience is supposed to just forgive them and forget about it, I guess? I don't know. Once again, this episode should be about either character connections and dynamics and stuff, or it should be about Odo's views of justice, or both, which is hard to integrate, and they fail to do it here. But instead, it tries to shoehorn in order to fill time while this arbitrary timer of this blob growing in the med lab is happening. It tries to fill time by shoehorning in this like D-plot here that is rushed and unresolved and just stupid, and it makes me so mad, because this is a plot that is worth exploring, I think, if it's done well, and it's not done well here, so it's really a shame. But this mob of people who is harassing Odo is interrupted by Julian Bashir, who says, just so you know, the timer is done, the DNA is done reconstructing, so once the episode has filled its time, it's just, it allows itself to end now. We can finally be done with this episode. And so the DNA is done reconstructing, and it's grown into a clone of the original victim, the Bajoran hooligan that got killed. And so then they just kind of conclude out of nowhere that the clone, the victim was also a clone who was killed by the original version of the guy in order to frame Odo. So this guy had such a vendetta against Odo from their past history that he created a clone of himself and then sent it on the station and then killed his clone in a scenario in which only Odo could be the suspect in order to ruin his career and put him behind bars. Maybe a kind of interesting plot if we had any knowledge of this character and his connection to Odo prior, but it comes out of nowhere. It's actually a pretty interesting sci-fi concept, but one that does not work here. Maybe it could work better if used somewhere else, but not in this case. For me, it's like, once again, it's like the racist people thing. I'm not given a reason why the victim would want to do this. I just don't know. It's just, I'm not invested because I don't understand why it would happen in the first place. Sadly, this is the least of our worries concerning the last 5 minutes of the episode. Just so you know, all this I'm talking about right now, the resolution happens in the last 5 minutes. It's not even a joke, or less perhaps. So after Bashir comes to this conclusion and about this clone and framing Odo, that kind of stuff, Odo just kind of just wakes up and realizes, wait, I know where the original guy is. And of course, the original guy is this hooded figure who we saw at the very start of the episode, or halfway through the episode. Odo's like, oh yes, I now know what I must do. And he boards this guy's ship, and without any kind of, reasoning behind it. Once again, this is a murder mystery that contains no actual detective work, no evidencing, no clue finding, no reasoning. The characters just do things, which is why it kind of sucks as a mystery. So, and also the audience knows something of a solution long before the characters do, and the audience is given no clues in the first place, which is also not very good. But he finds this this hooded figure on the ship that he just decided to board because he figured it out somehow, and then peels off his face, Scooby-Doo style, pulls off the mask, and it is in fact the original guy. It is in fact the same guy as the victim. And then the episode ends. And he would have gotten away with it too if it weren't those meddling changelings, it's so bizarre to me how abrupt and sudden it is. It has a plot, it has a mystery plot, to have a spine, like I said, that is totally not integrated with the actual messaging and point of the episode, or at least what it should be. And then it just solves it immediately after it's done its service of filling time. It's so bizarre to me because they could have spent the entire episode on just what they set up at the start and not with the mystery thing, but they just don't do that, and it's so bizarre. Then we get one last scene with Keiko starting the station school, which does kind of put a knot on the whole Miles and Keiko, Jake and Nog thing. There's also, I think there may be one more scene with Sisko and Dax and Bashir at one point, but it doesn't do it justice to solve the established, the set up character situation. So yeah, it'll get talked about more in future episodes, but here just not really that great. This episode just doesn't really grapple with anything that it's set up here. I do like the final scene with the school, because I mentioned this being kind of like an Animal Crossing type situation where you get to see the town getting built and growing and stuff. Establishing a school is pretty cool for that. But regarding the actual plot itself, they don't grapple with anything that happens here, like the fact that they have a clone of a random guy who is also a murderer just growing in their lab. They try to resolve this with a throwaway line, which are well, how are we gonna dispose of this guy? And I think Sisko says that he'll just live his life out on Bajor. He'll just join Bajor society. And that to me just exists as a line to kind of fill a plot hole. Oh, actually, wait, isn't this guy just on the station now, this clone? And they're oh yeah, we need to fill in a line here just to kind of write off that problem. So they put that in there without putting a whole lot of thought into it. Honestly, that could have been the halfway point of the episode. Instead of wasting time having this clone be the turning point here for the final acts and be how do we deal with this clone legally, morally, this and that, and then using that to explore Odo's sense of justice versus the law. That is a much better plot idea than what we have here by magnitudes. So this episode is rough. It's very rough. I can say it certainly not taking the top spot from past prologue. In fact, it's taking the bottom slot from Emissary. It's the worst one so far. It's the most entertaining episode so far, I think, just because the small bit of character exploration that we do get is actually pretty entertaining and cool to see. A lot of it is so absurd that I can't help but laugh. It's just like the pulling off the mask, the whole Avery Brooks acting incident towards the start. There's things here, it's kind of bad entertaining, but to like a 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10 level. So it's not like that entertaining, but still it's more so than the previous two, I'd say. But it struggles with basically everything else. Bad pacing. Not as bad of pacing as the previous two, but still pretty bad pacing. It takes a lot of good ideas, inserts a plot that's even more insulting and contrived than the previous episode, Past Prologue, which is also kind of like that. And then it refuses to integrate most of the themes that have been set up. The mystery leaves no clues to the audience. It tells the audience who the murderer is, a character that isn't met until they are caught, for starters as well, through a very obvious tell, and then it starts a countdown until the reveal, and then Odo just kind of Deus Ex Machinas, or Odo Ex Machinas, if you want to use that, himself to a wild and cartoony conclusion that does not resolve any of the other discussions in the episode. So it has good ideas, but it needed a main plot that was actually decent and actually integrated those ideas into the plot. Instead, we get a main plot that just exists to exist, and then thus leaves all of the actually interesting subplots hanging. This episode goes This episode goes straight to the bottom. I'll give it a 2 out of 10, I think. This one is pretty bad. But with that in mind, on that very rough note, if you like the video, well, go ahead and like the video. It helps me out a lot. Thanks for watching all the way to the end if you made it this far. Hopefully future episodes will actually be a bit more positive, but I wouldn't count on it for season 1. But thanks for sticking to the end. Also be sure to subscribe, join the Discord server, all those cool things. Shout out to my supporters on Ko-Fi and Patreon and YouTube: Rosie Pixels, 512, Frisky, Blake the Snake, A Herman24, Glee, Foxworthy, Calm Luke, and Tybee. That in mind, I love you guys. Be safe, be smart, don't be stupid, and have a great rest of your day.